Hey, Build Show Network. Steve Basic Architect. We're out here at our Riverside project on a nice, brisk Saturday morning, shooting some videos. But today I thought we would talk about the two different eave conditions that we have out on the house here. And they're intentionally different. And we're going to talk about what my intent there was from a design aspect. Then we'll look at the details of how we actually put these together. But so we're going to use the garage as the example. We're down here at the low eave. It rises from one wall all the way to the other wall, and it never changes pitch. The overhang on this side is parallel to the ground. And this is going to get all boxed in. So I call that that's your standard boxed soffit. And you can see I stop the box soffit at the wall plane, and then we go back out to the rake soffit here that stays in the plane of the slope. So we have the box soffit. When I was talking to the homeowner, I like the box soffit down on the low end because by having virtue of that flat base, it kind of feels like it's giving us a launching point or a platform to send that monoslope roof up across the top of the garage. And when we go over on this side, you'll notice here, there is no box soffit, but basically the whole eave condition is nothing more than a continuation of that monoslope. So it never levels out. It just continues to fly into the air. The soffit will get put in there with soffit boards, but they're not flat. This is more of a kinetic look to the soffits. And the idea there is, in contrast to the flat box soffit that kind of gives us that launching pad, this here carries the roof up and gives you that perception that the roof just continues and disseminates into the air. And I call that the flying soffit, right? Because it's just basically flying off into the air. So we have those two soffits, but when we stand back and look at the house, there's a really nice intent to what the design is happening there. So let's go back to the studio. We'll break out some details and we'll talk about both the box soffit and that flying soffit in detail. Let's see you back at the studio.
All right, so out there at the job site, roof eaves. Yeah, when you get a mono slope like that, we get to have some options. And I exercised two of them. Broke out the details. They're right here in front of me. I got big red in hand, and we ain't slowing down. So let's dive right in and let's check out some roof eave details. All right, so you get two details to review today. Yeah, you get a double barrel. So give you a sense of orientation. Here is the double top plate of the wall. And we're going to talk about the low eave. I like to call, if you do a house and has a roof, this is what I call the low eave. This is what I call the high eave. Right? I know it, when you look at it, kind of makes sense, but you wouldn't believe the amount of people that will say and argue that point. So anyways, 2x8 wall, enough with talking about crazy people. 2x8 wall, double top plate, staggered stud wall. In this case here, we're using 2x12 rafters. They're at 16 inches on center. This is in the garage framing, so the same detail applies to the house. So the insulation is in the detail, but it's exactly the same detail in the garage. It just doesn't have the insulation in there. We might put it in, we might not. He has a beautiful workshop in the basement, so we might consider the garage to be unconditioned. We haven't quite decided yet, but it's there should we want to do it. Anyways, top plate. So you can see the 2x12. 2x12 comes down, and that bird's mouth gets cut there, and it basically extends all the way out and then runs back up. And somehow I lost the dimension, but off the face of framing, I'm sure this is probably around 22 inches, I believe, on this project. And then we have our fascia boards and our sub fascia, which is the smaller piece there, our 5/8 inch zip roof that goes on there. And then we have our metal roof assembly, but we also have our soffit here, and even if we did insulate it, it would be an unvented roof assembly, so we don't need any vents in here. We just have our 1x8 lap soffits, so they'll give a little bit of a reveal there. But basically, like I talked about in the video, I like the low to be a flat and the high to suggest movement. So by cutting that bird's mouth and just planing this out, or cutting out the rafter so that it's level with the ground below here, down below, that we get this kind of strong anchoring point of the roof, as opposed to if we went up here and cut this down. Now, what's interesting is, and I can show this in the future when we actually do it, but in front of the garage on both rakes, the rakes actually follow the upper roof slope. So the pork chop, we call it, which is the part where the wall meets the rafter, you'll have that corner board is going to come up to a point here, and you'll have that pork chop, and it'll go over to the corner board. And so this triangular piece here, and I did set it so that this dimension here of D is exactly that 2x6 that runs up the wall, but this area that I'm coloring in will actually be in the plane of the exterior wall here. So this and that are the same. You'll have the slope fascia here is going to be projecting out in front of here, probably on the order of about plus 10 inches. I believe I had it on this project. So, but that's the low eave, getting that nice and flat. The high eave, I like to have what I call a flying eave. And you'll see in both of these conditions, I just want to point out one thing. Notice we have a 2x10 block that goes in there. That just keeps the rafters from getting the ability to rotate at all. So that having that in there, plus the roof sheathing, the 2x12s, it ties it all in there very nicely, as well as it provides a nice backer if you are going to insulate it. But anyways, here is the upper eave. And this one is, yeah, what I would consider the flying eave. And the reason for that is, you know, here's our 2x8 wall. There's our double top plate. And you can see the rafter cut. It actually follows the slope of the roof. And then it comes down here. So this is our 11¼ inches. But up here, this is probably on the order of 4½ inches. Now, the reason you don't have a bunch of these dimensions are, on the set of drawings, I have what I call a twin, which has this detail with none of the notes, but all of the dimensions. So the framer knows exactly. I did not give him the info as far as the dimensions that I'm expecting there. I just gave it to him in a nice clean drawing. But you can see that 2x12 goes, and then this gets cut out. So the original 2x12 was probably something like that, and this piece got cut out. And then we bring up our siding. You can see we have our 2x10 that goes in there, and then our zip R9 comes up, and that'll all get nailed off and tied into that. And that'll keep those rafters from wavering and rolling there. And of course, we have the 2x12 we talked about, the 5/8 inch zip on top, our standing seam metal roof assembly on top. We do have our Simpson hold downs on the inside there, and we have our same lap boards here, and then our 1x8 fascia and 1x4 sub fascia. Now,
one of the other details that is always in question here is, do we do what's called a plumb cut, or do we do a square cut? Now, you might have different names for them, but that's what I know them as: plumb cut and square cut. Plumb cut is when, if we carried that line down to the ground, it would be perpendicular to the ground. So it's basically plumb to the ground or slab or whatever the case may be. A square cut is when you're perpendicular to the rafter itself. So basically you would have that same 2 and 12 cut here. Now, the reason I don't like it is it really, sets that up for kind of a weird exposure, in that your fascia board is actually at an angle like that to the sun. And so your sun, rain, all of that stuff, I like to have that as a plumb cut there and have everything drip nice and neatly off of that cut. I think it looks nicer. If I ever want to add a gutter in here, I can very easily. The square cut really, there's no real easy way to add a gutter to that. So, but anyways, those are the two choices. Yeah, I like to mix and match these, and like we talked about, this here is, this rake is going to be out here. So this is going to be, roughly at 10 inches in front of the wall, down below there. So the corner board would come up all the way up to there. And then we'd have that rake coming out in front of it. But anyways, on the garage, that's our two eave conditions: the square eave at the bottom, or boxed eave, as I like to call it, and a plumb cut flying eave. So now you've learned a little bit of nomenclature that I like to use. So anyways, hopefully you enjoyed that.
Well, there you have it, folks. Roof eave details out on the garage, out at our Riverside project. Beautiful project. Howell Custom Building Group doing the job out there, doing a beautiful job out there. And yeah, very, very cool. So anyways, go check out my other videos here on the Build Show Network. Check out all my colleagues too. Literally thousands of videos, all the things we're doing right here, right now. Especially near and dear to my heart, Build Show Build Boston. Yeah, you can find it on the Originals tab on the Build Show Network site. And just pull it down and you can binge watch. I believe we're up on like episode 8 or 9 with 2 or 3 bonus episodes. So you got at least 10 episodes there to catch up on. And they're pretty in depth. So get a bowl of popcorn, your favorite drink, and sit back and let's talk some building. And lastly, you can find me on the Unbuilder podcast. Jake Bruton, Peter Yost. We talk all kinds of things building. So, and we have fun doing it. So anyways, that's all we got here this week. So hope you enjoyed that. Until next time, long live our buildings.